Meanwhile, major film and TV productions are still on hold as the actor unions continue to strike in Hollywood. Negotiations are underway. Edit's Tianshan has this update.
Nearly 12,000 Hollywood writers are back at work this week after many walked the picket lines for 148 days. The late-night talk shows, which were the first to go dark when writers stopped working in early May, are also the first to come back on air as of this week. Crowds have been forming long lines outside Hollywood studios for fans who've been waiting for the return of live entertainment for months.
I miss them, we miss them. I'm a nurse, my patients, that's what gets them through the night when they can't sleep at night. Late show, all the different shows, we're happy, we're excited. We turn the TVs on for them, and Jimmy Kimmel is one of the #1 fans that we all love and talk about.
Live audiences were ecstatic to welcome back their favorite show along with the comic relief so many were craving.
But now the writer strike is over with a new contract that includes protections against AI, cost of living increases, better pay for streaming.
Having secured many of their demands in a tentative deal, writers are now in the process of ratifying the new contract in voting that will last until Monday. But in the meantime, performers from major TV shows and films will not be appearing anywhere, including the talk shows, for as long as their strike continues. Representing nearly 160,000 film and television actors, singers, voice artists, and other media professionals, the SAG-AFTRA union continues its separate negotiations with the studios. And as difficult as this summer has been for entertainment industry workers, many continue to show solidarity with striking actors until they're given what they call a fair deal. It is Tianshan, CGTN, Hollywood.
Streaming giant Netflix is looking to raise prices for its ad-free service after the ongoing Hollywood actors' strikes ends. Netflix has not announced what the new price will be or when it will start, but it will impact viewers first in the U.S. and then Canada. The Writers Guild of America ended its strike and began voting on that contract that could change the business of streaming. Over the past year or so, the cost of major ad-free streaming services has gone up already by around 25%. For more on this, on the WGA and the Hollywood actors strike, I'm joined by Tom Ara. He's the global and U.S. co-chair of media, sport, and entertainment at DLA Piper. Tom, good to see you. You know, there was some talk that having part of that agreement done, we would get the other part of the agreement done. What do you think's holding up getting this fully done?
Well, Phil, thank you for having me join again today. We have to keep in mind we're talking about two different unions, although they both work in the same town, Hollywood. One represents actors and the interests of actors, and the other writers. The writers' deal is done, it's sealed, the ink has dried, the writers are back to work. The actors remain on strike. That's continued for over 70 days now, and the demands they have vary from those of the writers. So it's not as simple as saying, hey, the writers have made a deal, let's just copy that deal and move on and get back to work.
How much longer can they stay on strike? I don't know the details, but I'm guessing they certainly don't get paid the full amount. There might be some offset by perhaps the union, but nonetheless, there is not enough income to pay all the actors during this time of sort of non-work.
Well, that's correct. I mean, there is no limit time-wise on how long they can remain on strike. Obviously, it becomes a war of attrition of sorts. At some point, one party or the other will either run out of money to subsist, and that would primarily be, you know, in the case of performers who, many of which, I mean, there are 160,000 plus members, are not in the high net worth category, or the studios relent and they are in desperate need of content and the performers to go back to work. Of course, there is grand desire to get back to work, to get content produced again. But the reality is they have to meet eye to eye on these important issues before that can happen.
When the strike first started, we all sort of surmised as to like who had the upper hand. And I read several articles talking about, let's take Netflix, for example. They were saving anywhere between, I think, $1 and $1.5 billion over the last 3 to 4 months by not having to spend it on the expenses when it comes to these productions. Now, eventually, they're going to run out of content, or I guess consumers would demand new content. And at some point, there is a deadline because you can't shut everything down. It takes so much more work to get it started up again. Do you think that there will be a deal before, say, Thanksgiving or Christmas?
I'm very hopeful that there will be, and their meetings have already commenced. They're taking place again. The 4 executives that led the charge to seal a deal with the Writers Guild of America are at the negotiating table with SAG-AFTRA, which is led by Fran Drescher, famous actor, actress, and Duncan Crabtree Ireland, who's the executive director. And so there's certainly momentum, there's hope. And I've said this before, Phil, to your colleagues when speaking on this topic before, labor unrest is not good for business. Stock prices don't like it. The street doesn't like it. People want to get back to work. People want to produce content. And I think there's momentum now to move in that direction.
Tom, what's the last key or last couple key sticking points that they need an agreement on?
So for the actors, there are a few. One of them is streaming revenue share. It's a big issue because effectively the actors are asking for a share of the revenues that the streaming services receive from content that is produced by them under these guild agreements. And they're asking for a 2% revenue share on those projects. It's a very, very controversial topic because it's tied to revenue. It's something different than what the WGA had asked for. And this is why, as I said earlier, you can't just take one agreement, copy and paste and change some names and sign it. So that's one. They're asking for pretty significant pay increases. The studios have offered significant pay increases, around 5% in the first year. SAG-AFTRA is looking for 11% in the first year, which is there's a big delta there when you're thinking about percentages. At the end of the day, the dollar amounts, there's obviously a lot of back and forth about whether they're meaningful to the studios or not, but there is a gap there. And there are some other issues as well.
If you were negotiating at this table, what would a compromise look like for you?
That's a good question. I think a compromise is going to have to find a middle ground on some of these very important issues. I think certainly streaming has been a sensitive topic for the unions and for the streamers for a long time, and how much of that revenue should be allocated to the performers. A compromise there would probably have to find some middle ground.
Right.
Artificial intelligence, another topic we haven't touched on, but I have in prior interviews, is a sticking point because actors don't want their identities and their likenesses used without their consent with the use of artificial intelligence. There are tremendous opportunities with AI, and so I think there needs to be a middle ground there between use and uses of technology and violating rights.
Tom, people often forget that not all these actors and actresses make millions of dollars a year, and Netflix already came out today and said, hey, we're going to raise the price of our monthly services for, I guess, the ad-free part of it. Basically, kind of like a shot across the bow saying, hey, this is going to impact consumers ultimately. I've got like 15 seconds. I just want to get your thoughts on what you think what that might mean, what Netflix is saying there.
Well, I don't want to specifically comment on any particular company's plans or pricing, but I think the reality is that costs will increase for production, both as a result of the WGA agreement and a new SAG-AFTRA agreement. So that may certainly eventually trickle down to the consumer, and I think that's just the fact of life of what we're dealing with right now.